Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 406, and today's date is July 3rd, 2014, and the title of this episode is The Economic Recovery Propaganda is Complete. The next step is the economic collapse, because the corporate media, the United States government, the central bankers, they are out there and they are pushing this agenda really, really hard. They want everyone to believe we are in a recovery and there is no such thing as collapse. There are no bubbles. Real estate is doing fine. Student loan debt doing fine. Derivative market doing fine. Everything is okay. Europe doing fine. We don't see any type of problems right now. And of course, today we all know that the unemployment rate came down from 6.3% to 6.1%. And this is to keep the illusion that we are in this unbelievable recovery. And of course, we can see what is happening. The Middle East problems are getting worse. The central bank, the United States government, the European nations are pushing the agenda of terrorism, of fear, and it's very specific. They want everyone to believe that we are going to be attacked any minute by a terrorist organization or by a group of or a country, and they're continually pushing this. And of course, during the time of independence, which is July 4th, Independence Day, they are really pushing this agenda where they're taking away more and more of our rights, making us get pat down even more at the airports, and they are doing this on purpose. Now, of course, as we know, this attack in the United States and in Europe is not going to happen because of terrorism. It's going to happen because the central bankers, the U.S. government, and the rest realize that this system is falling apart. It is collapsing. And the only way to keep this illusion alive is to continually manipulate numbers. And every time they manipulate the numbers, the alternative media is out there saying, no, this is what's really going on. And if you look through the headlines that they're giving you, you can see that there is no recovery. It's fake. It's false. It's phony. It's just like in 2008 when they told you everything was absolutely fine. There is no forecast of any type of recession, depression. There are no bubbles. Housing is rebounding. It is fine. We've contained the subprime. We don't know what you're talking about. Everything is great. And then all of a sudden, it all fell apart. And they needed bailouts. They needed money. They always tell you the opposite of what's really going on. They trick you. They deceive you. They want you to believe in their reality. And then they take it all away from you. This is what the bankers do. This is what the governments are doing. Because they realize and they understand that when this falls apart, people are going to be pissed. They're going to be angry. They're not going to know what to do. They're going to riot, and this is why they created DHS, to protect not the people, not protect them from terrorism, to spy on the people, to protect the government officials. Why do you think the Federal Reserve has over 1,000 private security guards protecting them? And of course, the president came out and said, these private security guards are just like any police force in the United States, and they're hiring more. They haven't stopped. Why do you think the bankers need these guards? Because they're scared. They understand what's going to happen when the system comes down. Why do you think back during 9/11 they created DHS, and DHS has done absolutely nothing for terrorism and protecting the borders and protecting the power grid from cyber attacks? They haven't done anything. Yes, they received a lot of money, but what have they spent it on? Tanks, bullets, weapons, convincing the local law enforcement to come into compliance, to work with them when things go south. They know what they're doing. They understand what's going to happen. They realize that this entire system cannot be sustained. So they were taking precautions. They were protecting themselves. And they always knew that they would have to start some type of war. I mean, we've been talking about war since I started. Actually, I've been talking about this way before that, but since I started this, we can see every single day how they are maneuvering and placing the assets. Every single day, we can see how they are creating social profiles of every single person, correlating all the data, introducing facial recognition, understanding who you are, what you do, who you associate with, because they need to create these lists. Why do you think they have these private lists? Why do you think they have the no-fly list and they don't want anyone to see it? Think about that. Why wouldn't they want to let anyone know how to get off it, or why am I on it? Because they can't explain it. They can't explain why you're on this. And they don't want to take you off because since they can't explain it, because they don't want to explain it, because they said if they do explain it, it's going to be because, we suspect that you're anti-government, that you're meeting with these people who are anti-government, that you might rise up when things go wrong and try to take the power away from the authority. They can't say that. So this is why all of this is happening right now. And the illusion now is really complete. They have brought the unemployment down. The stock market is reaching all-time new highs. They've smashed gold down to where people don't even think about it anymore. Like, gold is not going up anymore. Everything is fine. Actually, we see it go up. We see it come back down. They trained the people. The people have been trained to believe that we are in a recovery. The market is continually going up. Thinking, and this is what people believe, that companies are making profits. They're doing very, very well. There are no people being laid off because, look, the stock market's going up. There's not a problem because gold hasn't really moved at all. So you can see that the illusion now has been completed. They have manipulated all the numbers. There's a problem, though. These numbers now are starting to separate themselves from reality. And they can't continually manipulate it because it's really starting to look like something's actually wrong. And this is what happened in the first quarter of 2014 with the GDP going so low, down to negative 2.9%. They try everything they possibly can to keep these numbers in the positive range. And of course, it is very, very difficult to do as the economy, the real economy, and the illusion separates itself and is moving further and further away. And we can see that there are many corporate media stations now starting to scratch their heads saying something's not right with unemployment because, we see all the people that have fallen off that aren't counted anymore. What are they actually doing? How could this be real? It makes no sense. So what we're seeing right now is that unemployment again has come down. But why? Why did it come down? Well, it came down because they didn't count those people who've fallen off the job market. And you have to remember, those people who haven't been on an interview in 4 weeks, I'm sorry, you're not counted anymore. You can continually send out resumes, but guess what? You're just not counted. And what we're seeing is that they will count part-time jobs just the same as a full-time job. And we see right now that full-time jobs have dropped by 523,000. So there were 523,000 full-time jobs lost, and those people who got laid off tried to get other jobs, and the only ones they could find were part-time. And we see that part-time jobs soared to 799,000. Very interesting. We also have to remember those kids coming out of college now who can't find those jobs, those full-time jobs that are associated with their majors, are now getting the part-time work. I saw an article in one of the corporate news websites saying this 28-year-old college graduate who has a master in, has a Bachelor of Science, could only find a $10.65 job in a retail store, but she does get health benefits and a 401k, and they're calling her one of the lucky ones. Really? So you went to college, you have all these student loans, you can barely make payments, you can't live on your own, you're making $10.65 an hour, and this is the lucky one? What are the unlucky ones? And the big question is, out of all these jobs that they're telling us that came down, the unemployment rate came down to 6.1%, who's actually hiring and who isn't really hiring? Well, we see construction, they're not really hiring. We see leisure and hospitality, they hired about 39,000 people. We see education and health industry hired 38,000, and that was because of Obamacare, where they placed all these people to work in that industry. Government up 26,000. Temp help up 13,000 people. And we see that manufacturing not doing well in hiring. And again, construction not doing well in hiring. So we can see right now that this illusion is really starting to fall apart. But of course, the rest of America who believes in this illusion, they feel something's wrong, but they don't know exactly what it is. But students who are coming out of college realize that there's something majorly wrong. According to a survey published by Wells Fargo last month, 40% of millennials, those between ages of 22 and 33, call their student debt overwhelming. 56% of millennials say that they were living paycheck to paycheck with no savings or emergency funds whatsoever. Wow, and this is the foundation of the next generation. The same report found that 47% of millennials allocate at least half of their paychecks to paying off debt, and that 40% do not make enough to save anything for the future. The study also found that 56% of millennial college graduates reported that they relied on loans while attending college, as opposed to 35% of the baby boomers. So as time goes on, it's getting worse, and people cannot afford college. And when they come out of college, they have no jobs. They have no savings. That is not helping the economy at all. This is why we see retail collapsing. This is why we see people taking out mortgages and refinancing their homes collapsing by 66%. This is why the Fed had to step in and say, you know what, let's give some free money to these investment and hedge fund companies to boost the real estate market, because they realize the American people cannot do it. Now, the central banks, they are getting very nervous. They do not like digital currency. First of all, they can't tax it. They can't get a piece of the action from it. And a senior central bank official has warned that virtual and digital currencies have the potential to challenge the sovereignty of states. No, it has the potential to challenge the currencies of these central bankers, because you have to remember, when they loan out the money, it's with interest attached. And also you have to pay taxes on the currency from these central bankers. Other forms of currency, like gold, silver, if you try to trade in that, you don't have to pay taxes on that because it's not part of their system. Same thing with the digital money. It's not part of their system. Now, it looks like right now, as we know, the BRIC nations are looking to create their own bank, and Shanghai right now is considered to be the front runner between Russia, China, India, and South Africa to become home to the new BRICS Bank. Now, as we know, the BRIC nations, there are roughly about 120 of these BRIC nations that have come together, and they're trying to create a system to be separate and apart from the dollar, and this is why they're making all these moves. And the head of the Russian Central Bank, Elvira, I'm going to try to pronounce her last name, Nabulina, unveiled an elegant technical solution for this problem and left a clear hint regarding the members of the anti-dollar alliance that is being created by the efforts of Moscow and Beijing. We've done a lot of work on the ruble-yuan swap deal in order to facilitate trade financing. And then she dropped the major bomb of what they're planning. We are discussing with China and our BRIC partners the establishment of a system of a multilateral swaps that will allow to transfer resources to one or another country. If needed, a part of the currency reserves can be directed to the new system. It seems that the Kremlin chose the all-in-one approach for establishing its anti-dollar alliance. Currency swaps between the BRICS central banks will facilitate trade financing while completely bypassing the dollar. At the same time, the new system will also act as a de facto replacement of the IMF, because it will allow the members of the alliance to direct resources to finance the weaker countries. I think the work on a ruble-yuan swap line will finalize in the near future, and the way for the ruble-yuan settlement will be open. Moreover, we are not the only ones with such initiatives. We know about the statements made by Mr. Neuer, chairman of the Bank of France, as a retaliation for what Americans have done to the BNP Paribas. The trade with China must be done in yuan or euro and not with the dollar. If the current trend continues, soon the dollar will be abandoned by most of the significant global economies, and it will be kicked out of the global trade finance. The point of no return for the dollar may be much closer than it is generally thought. In fact, the greenback may have already passed its point of no return and on its way to irrelevance. So we can see right now they are completely planning, because they realize this whole dollar system is starting to come crumbling down. We see the problems in the Middle East, we see Ukraine, we see Central Africa, and things are not going well for the central bank. Most of the nations are in a huge amount of debt. They have a lot of austerity. We know that Greece now is looking to China to help them out of the situation, because IMF continually dug the hole deeper and deeper, and Greece just couldn't get out of that situation, so they're looking for other ways to increase their financial stability, and they were going towards China in that respect. And we can see right now that Italy, France, Portugal, Italy, and many of the countries out there have a huge amount of debt. Unemployment is skyrocketing. The youth unemployment is just unbelievable, and it is getting worse and worse as time goes on. Of course, here in the United States, we have the ability to create money, and they are keeping the illusion alive. We saw this back in 1929. The European nations were falling apart, and of course the illusion in the United States was kept alive until the very last minute when the stock market went down. And back then, the all-time highs were in the 400 range, and right now the all-time high, I believe we hit about 17,000. They're probably going to try to get it to 20, and then all of a sudden you're going to see this baby drop like you have never seen anything fall so fast. And this is going to be the indicator that, yes, finally we are in this depression, and everyone will realize it. You'll see companies laying off en masse. Of course, all of this will then be blamed on another nation, because they're going to say another nation caused this, and this is going to be the event. And of course, everything is going to start to fall apart, and it'll be a domino effect, and it will not be able to stop. And this is why they're going to have to put the kill switches on the stock market, and this is why they implemented the kill switch on the stock exchange, the NASDAQ, and the BAT system. And we also understand that they had the bail-in documents ready, because they realized once they shut the system down, they can't let people take their money out, because you know what's going to happen. People are going to run to the bank. They're going to be nervous. They're going to be scared, because they don't know what's happening. And this is why all of this has been put into place. Now, it looks like Edward Snowden's information was going to be released, and it seems like it's running into a little bit of a difficulty of releasing it. So this New York-based whistleblowing site, Cryptome, is saying that they will aid and abet the release of the remaining Snowden documents. In July, they're saying they're just going to dump all of his information. And the reason why they're doing this is because they want to prevent a U.S. war. That's very interesting that they're saying they're doing this to prevent a war that's up and coming. And what they said was, only way war can be avoided, warmongers are on a rampage, so yes, citizens holding Snowden docs will do the right thing and dump it, so this whole war completely doesn't happen. And we understand that the central bankers, U.S. government, they are heading towards war. They are pushing the agenda because they realize the collapse is coming. Now, we understand the immigration problem is just getting worse and worse, and we see now that what they are trying to do is place these children on these buses, and they're bringing them to different cities and just dropping them off. And first of all, most of these children are not being screened. The background checks are kind of worthless because they came up with no paperwork whatsoever. They have no IDs. So how do you do a background check? It's very, very difficult to do this, and you have to understand they don't want to do any background check. They don't want to do any type of screening. And right now, immigration officials said most of the families headed for California were likely to be released under limited supervision to await deportation. Many would be placed with relatives or friends or in temporary housing provided by charity groups. Immigration and Custom Enforcement Agency spokesman Virginia Kais said authorities were being especially careful to avoid disclosing the whereabouts of these people because they're afraid others are going to come and say, you know what, you need to leave the country. But the thing is, they're so close to the border, why don't they just drop them off over the border again? You know they came here illegally, bring them back over and let them go through the proper channels. Of course not. They're dropping them off in these cities. They're going to housing, and of course they're waiting for their parents and their grandparents to come up, and the president said he will give them work permits. So we can see that this whole thing was planned. It was an agenda that they're trying to create a crisis so they can get certain things passed. Now, there is a warning out there. There's many warnings happening now, but there is a warning out there from Uganda. Now, we have to remember, and I reported this back, I think it was episode 388 and 396, if I remember correctly. I might be off on the episode, but it's around one of those. I did this twice, and we talked about Uganda, where the Uganda officials said they intercepted information. Russia was helping, that there was going to be some type of terrorist attack, and this terrorist group was being funded by the United States. And they were looking for them, trying to figure out where they are, and they called them the God's Resistant Army. So today, what has happened is there is a warning out there. And then we also have to remember that the United States also placed sanctions on the government because of their anti-gay laws that came out. And now today there is a warning that the U.S. has been warned by Uganda that it seems like there could be some type of threat, specific threat, of an attack on the Entebbe International Airport. The U.S. Embassy in Uganda stated that it was handed information by the police that a specific threat to attack Entebbe International Airport by unknown terrorist groups today. The embassy went on to warn the continued threat of potential terrorist attacks in the country. Among potential terrorist targets are hotels, restaurants, nightclubs, shopping malls, etc. And we have to remember who is there in Uganda, and I mentioned this in one of my other reports. Yes, it is the Chinese. And what are they doing there? Well, they are helping Uganda by pumping in $8 billion for the new rail plan. And we can see right now why the United States is trying to get into Uganda. The same reason they're trying to get into Nigeria, the same reason why they're in Mali, the same reason they're in Sudan. It is the same exact approach. Capture the country, kick out China, capture the natural resources, put it on the U.S. dollar as a reserve. And you have to remember, China has a huge footprint in Central Africa. They are pumping in billions of dollars into their infrastructure, building up hospitals, roads, and schools. They've had a clearinghouse set up in Kenya. Most of the countries there are dumping the U.S. dollar and bringing in the yuan renminbi into their reserve system. So we can see why the United States government central bankers need to be in that region, need to be in the Middle East, up in Ukraine, and we can see that pretty much they're having a very difficult time. Many of the plans that are being put forth aren't working out to their benefit. Now, as we know, the ceasefire has ended in the Ukraine. Poroshenko pretty much used that time period to reinforce his troops, to reposition them, and they have continually fired upon the people of the southeast region of Donetsk. And what's very interesting right now is that the shells that the Ukrainian army are using are American-made. And they have evidence, they have the shells, and they're showing everyone that yes, these are made in America, and they are American, and that's where they originated from. So we can see right now, and as we know, the United States government, the central bankers, control the puppet regime in Ukraine. NATO is there, and we understand that Biden and Kerry also have parts of their friends and family involved in Ukraine, and the whole thing was created. It was a coup d'etat to put them on the EU system, then eventually have them join NATO. What they didn't expect to happen was to have Crimea be voted away, and now the southeastern region, which voted away to be separate and apart from the puppet regime. But of course they can't have this, because all they'd be left with is the West in Ukraine, and they can't do much with that because a lot of the production and wealth is in the south and in the southeast. Now, Iran is out there, and they're saying if Iraq asks for help, they will help out in Iraq. And right now, Iraq has not helped out, and Iran is saying they would if they did ask. Now, the Islamic State, or ISIS, whatever you want to call them, the terrorist group that is funded by the United States government, Israel, and the Arab nations, have pretty much marched across eastern Syria near the border with Iraq, seizing towns, villages, and country's largest oil field as rival rebel factions gave up the fight in that area. Now, of course, as we know, the United States government, Israel, and other Arab nations have been funding the rebels, which is included with ISIS and ISIL, and I know they like to separate them and say, no, they're the moderates, they're not the Al-Qaeda, they're separate and apart. They're all the same. I mean, yes, they might have broken off into separate groups and things like that, but they're all being funded, and then the United States government tried to pretend that, oh no, we didn't fund that group, we only funded this group, which is absolutely ridiculous. Now, Dempsey is out there, and he is saying that Iraq cannot beat ISIL, and he will not rule out more U.S. troops in Iraq. Well, that's not a real surprise, because we understand that the airstrikes would not do what is needed to be done here. We understand they'll have to put boots in the ground, but this isn't really their mission. Their mission is really to go into Syria. But what has happened here, Dempsey said, even though the U.S. has a better idea of the situation on the ground, the complexity, though, is the intermingling of Sunni groups that have formally opposed the Iraq government in any case. They have intermingled with the ISIL groups in particular, and that's going to be a tough challenge to separate them. And I've said this before, we have a natural uprising of the Sunni people. There are Saddam Hussein generals that are intermixed in this. They saw this as an opportunity, and they took it. Meanwhile, the United States government, Israel, and other Arab nations were controlling the terrorist organization to wreak havoc in Iraq and make the connection into Syria. So they really have two problems going on right now, and this is becoming a very difficult situation. Dempsey said that Obama has added more U.S. troops on the ground, and he said there's kind of narrative out there that we're doing some type of mission creep. And that's the wrong phrase. The issue is a mission match. We're going to match them. Well, isn't that pretty much the same thing? They're bringing in more troops. And eventually we'll have full troops there, because they need to get into Syria. They need boots on the ground. They need air cover. They need all of this. And they know exactly what they're trying to do, and they're still trying to make the connection with ISIL and Syria, that they're working with each other, and they are making the connection, and they're continually pushing this forward. And just today, France, of course they always have the proof, but they never can show you the proof. France has determined that the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant was selling crude oil to the regime of the president of Syria, President Assad. They said the oil sales marked secret cooperation between ISIL and Assad, as well as his Iranian ally. So you see what they're doing here? They're out there again trying to convince everyone that ISIL and Assad teamed up with each other, and oil is being sold, and Iran was part of it. Now, why would they be doing this at this point? Well, the reason is they need to get into Syria, and now they're paving the road, the path into Syria. And it says we have proof that when ISIL took over oil, it sold it to Assad. And here they are, they're making the entire thing and connecting it, just like they did with the chemical weapons. We have proof. Of course, they never show you proof, but we have tons of proof, and here they are. They're going to be pushing this, and later on you're going to see more and more of this information pop up, and eventually what they're going to say is that this terrorist group was created and being directed by Assad to go into Iraq, and you can just see how this is starting to form right now. Now, of course, here in the United States, they're trying to link ISIL here in the United States, and the FBI agents tried more than once to discourage a 19-year-old suburban Denver woman who said she was intent on waging jihad in the Middle East before arresting her in April, and she wanted to go to Syria and fight with ISIL, and they arrested her just like the other guy they arrested, and they're trying to make the case that there are people running around here who are radicalized and want to fight jihad, who converted to Muslim, and they're here in this country. It is a scare tactic. This person's name was Shannon Maureen Connolly, had told agents that she wanted to use her American military training from the U.S. Army explorers to start a holy war overseas. And they are building this propaganda up. They want everyone to believe that it could be the veterans who are switching sides, becoming Muslim, wanting to go over there, and they could do something here. And they're building this case, and they're not stopping because they want everyone to be scared. They want everyone to realize where this is coming from. And of course, to increase the fear, as I said, it was 2 days ago, the ISIL and ISIS groups were out there telling everyone that they're going to be using aircraft to hit England or the United States. And of course, what has happened is they have increased the security in the airport. That means more pat-downs. They're looking for this high-tech explosive where these terrorists have created this new type of explosives where it can't be detected, and they're creating fear, and they're doing this. Isn't that weird how they're doing this right on July 4th, Independence Day, where we fought for our freedoms, and here we are where they're taking away our freedoms at the same exact time? This was specifically done on purpose. And right now this whole thing went on to say that terrorists are plotting to use new stealth bombs in laptops and even humans to bring down a U.S.-bound passenger plane. Airport security was increased across the UK, US, and other countries amid fears of al-Qaeda. Bomb experts have successfully designed a new explosive that can bypass current checks. So all this money that we spent on all these checks was a waste of time. And what they're saying is all the intelligence that NSA and everything else is a waste of time because they can't stop anything. Why can't they stop any of it? Because it's really them. They're the ones who are creating this false flag. They're the ones who are setting it up. They're the ones who are going to do this to convince you to go to war. They're the ones who are saying, when I say they, it's the central bankers, U.S. government, because they realize their system's falling apart. They will not be able to sustain this. And they need to convince everyone right here and now. They need the illusion of recovery. They need the fear that they're going to attack. Put these together, what do you have? We were just about to recover, except this group, which is tied to Syria, attacked us with Russia and brought our system to its knees. This is what they're trying to show everyone right now. And of course, this threat originated from U.S. intelligence, had an immediate impact on the British airports where passengers were subjected to more stringent and rigorous security checks. The same thing happened here in the United States. It feels like we're going back to that Bush era where they had the traffic lights, the different levels, yellow, green, red, of terror to keep us in fear. Well, guess what? The people are getting sick and tired of all of this, and they're really not paying attention anymore. This goes on to say that Americans are tired of constant terrorist warnings issued by the government, which are the direct result of Washington's wrong-headed foreign policy, and a political analyst says. It says most of the Americans don't even listen anymore about what's going on. They're past the point of fear, which makes me very nervous because they're starting to realize this as they keep pushing this out there. Most of the people that I speak to go, yeah, whatever, it doesn't make a difference. See, we haven't seen anything. This kind of makes me worried because this shows that they will definitely have to do something here in the United States to really convince everyone. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.